So in this second drawing molecules video, we're only going to be focusing on two more examples that showed different things that we didn't get to see in the first video. So for our first example here, we have H2S. Step number one is to count the total number of valence electrons. Here we have two hydrogens, and each hydrogen gives us one electron for a total of 2. And there's one sulfur. Each sulfur gives us 6 electrons for a total of 6. So 2 plus 6 gives us a total of 8 electrons to add to the drawing somewhere. Step number 2 is to connect all the elements to the central atom using the single bonds. Remember, hydrogen can never be the central atom, so we have 2 hydrogens attached to the central sulfur atom, and we had 8. We just used 4 electrons for 2 single bonds, and now we only have 4 more electrons to add. Step number 3 is to add valence electrons to the outer elements, but remember, hydrogen only needs 2 electrons to be happy, so both of these, because they have single bonds already attached to them, they're done. So again, we had 8, we used 4 with single bonds, we didn't use any to fill valence shells, so we still have 4 more to add. Step number 4 is to add the remaining electrons to the central atom, so we're going to put 2 on the bottom of sulfur and 2 at the top of sulfur. Again, we started with 8, we used 4 for 2 single bonds, we didn't use any to fill outer shells, we just used 4 more to add to the central atom, so we are done adding electrons to this drawing. Step number 5, we need to make sure that everything has a full outer shell, so the 2 hydrogens here have a single bond associated with them, and his 2 electrons, so they're done. And the sulfur here has 2 single bonds, which is 4, and then 4 unpaired electrons for a total of 8 electrons. Next example is going to be CO2. Again, step number 1 is to count the total number of valence electrons. Carbon, there's 1 of them. Each one gives us 4 electrons for a total of 4. And there are 2 oxygens, each giving us 6 electrons for a total of 12 electrons. So here in this drawing, we're going to have 16 total electrons somewhere. Step number 2 is to connect the elements to the central atom. So carbon is our central atom here. So we have carbon in the middle, 2 oxygens on either, or an oxygen on either side connected with single bonds. We started with 16 electrons. We just used 4 for single bonds. So now we only have 12 more electrons to add to the drawing. Step number 3 is to fill the outer elements with valence shells. So we're going to add 2, 4, and 6 to the oxygen on the left and 6 more to the oxygen on the right. And so here we have 16 electrons, 4 used for single bonds, 12 used to fill valence shells, and so now we don't have any more electrons to add. Step number 4 is to add remaining electrons to the central atom. Again, we don't have any to add to the central atom. So we're going to skip this step, but we're going to go ahead and show you the math of it as well. Step number 5 is to rearrange any bonds into double and triple bonds if needed. So we're going to circle these oxygens. Each oxygen has 6 unpaired electrons and 1 single bond for a total of 8. But our carbon only has 2 single bonds. So it only has 4 electrons associated with it. So we're going to have to rearrange some of these things in order to get it to be happy as well. So we're going to take 2 electrons off of oxygen and make it into a double bond. So those electrons leave oxygen. Oxygen still has 8 associated with it, but carbon now only has 6. So we still need to do some work. So we're going to take 2 more electrons from the other oxygen and make it into a double bond between the 2. And so those electrons leave. Oxygen still has 8 because it has a double bond and 4 unpaired electrons. And now our carbon has 2 double bonds, which is a total of 8 electrons. So now this molecule is complete.
Created using Powtoon.